Hi, welcome to the latest episode of NAMI-NYS Perspectives, your show designed to keep you supported, connected, and inspired as we navigate the COVID-19 crisis. And today, I'm so happy to be joined by a really special guest, a great friend of mine, a great mental health advocate. He's a mental health advocate with a musical twist, the one and only Zak Sandler. How are you today, Zak?
Hey Matt, so great to see you. I like to think about what I'm going to say when you ask me that,
Yeah.
and I want to be specific. And today I'm actually feeling joyful, mostly. Yesterday I had a fantastic birthday, probably my
Yes, happy
best
belated.
one. Thank you. Thank you. My girlfriend Lena just did an amazing job, and my friends, we did virtual karaoke
Oh.
last night, which was super fun. So
Yeah,
anyone
so with
listening to
you and
this,
your friends, that must be really a hell of a karaoke session. So, for those who don't know Zak, amongst his many accolades, he is the recipient of the 2018 NAMI-NYS Young Leader Award. He is an incredible musician who's been featured in the Broadway pits playing piano for the Broadway shows Wicked and Mean Girls. And he is also the author of his own play about his mental health challenges, Inside My Head, which, if people have been to the NAMI-NYS Education Conference the past couple of years, you've been lucky enough to see Zak live and perform. So all these things, I mean, you're just such a remarkable guy. It's like there's so many things to talk about with you. It doesn't even know where to start. But you're kind of building on what we're talking on now, like just kind of started like checking in and it's so amazing to me to see as we navigate this, like things like birthdays that maybe people took for granted before. Some people are birthday people, some people are not birthday people, but people are really trying to rally around people to make these occasions special. So again, can you kind of just talk about how you're navigating all of this and how you're doing as a whole?
yeah, I'd love to. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as I think we all know, it's a really unusual time, very big change from what we're used to, and also very challenging in a lot of ways. And also, I think a very unique opportunity to challenge the habits that we've had for a long time, at least in my case,
Yeah.
20, 30 years. I just turned 34 yesterday, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Uh, and so it, I think that's the two-sided coin here.
Yeah.
And I think for me, the biggest challenges have been not being able to travel anywhere. Like we haven't left whatever a 20-minute bike ride radius from
Mhm.
here in 2 months almost now.
Yeah.
Uh, and and also one thing that I live with my girlfriend
Mhm.
here in this apartment. You can
Mhm.
see this is actually my studio with my
Apartment
keyboard.
slash studio.
Yeah, and my mic. I don't think you can see my mic. It's over
Yeah.
here. So, uh, so one thing that's been tricky is like differentiating different parts of the day. Like,
Right.
oh, we're starting work now, and okay, now we're done with work and we're transitioning to dinner. So even things like changing our clothes at different moments in the day,
Yeah.
or we at one point we said between 10 and 5:30 we are going to be coworkers who kiss.
I like that.
So nothing about why didn't you take out the recycling
Mhm.
or what are you doing next Saturday? None of that. It's just we're in our own spaces working until the evening when we can connect as partners. And yeah, so finding that space has
Yeah.
been a challenge. Um, I think what else specific to Corona.
Well, I know for us, that's been like a real challenge. I'm glad you mentioned that because I know that's something a lot of people are struggling with, like that work-life balance. I think when this whole thing first started, my wife and I were doing like rolling along. We were both so busy that we just kind of, and now we kind of realize that our work-life balance is kind of off kilter. You know, we're both working from home. We're both
Hmm.
kind of working harder now than we were when we were back in our offices, just because her organization and obviously NAMI are both trying to address some of the issues around this. So that's been a real kind of struggle. I mean, it's kind of a funny thing we were talking about right before we started recording. It's like, I want you to have a son, but your girlfriend's doing yoga right now, and we don't want to disturb her doing yoga. So it's like all these things that we never had to consider before, that finding this new normal and establishing the boundaries. So I'm glad you talked about that.
Yeah, well, so she's a therapist, and so we have two different white noise machines here, which definitely helps the space issue, and
Mhm.
uh, and also we were lucky to have a second bedroom, which we're using as well, which I'm using as my office. She's been
Oh,
doing her therapy sessions in the living room with her laptop and a stack of books with a
wow.
bookshelf behind her, so it looks like a library or something.
Right, right. Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we're all adjusting. But I mean, obviously, it's so funny. The first time I ever met Zach, I love to tell this story. It was a few years ago at the NAMI National Convention that was in Washington, D.C., and we had a meeting with Senator Schumer's office, and everyone, he had just been named the minority leader, and everyone wanted to go to Senator Schumer's office. I think there was like 100 people at this meeting, and maybe 30 of them were from New York. It was like we had to literally have it in the hallway. And I'd never met Zach before, and he came up to me and said, "Do you mind if I tell my story to the senator's staff?" I was like, "Sure, of course." And you told this incredible story, and I was like, "Wow, who is this guy? How have I never met him before?" But can you kind of talk about what led you to tell your story first, just to become an advocate, and then kind of talk about how you've put a musical twist on your advocacy?
Well said, Matt. So, how did I come to tell my story? Well, so I am actually the son of two mental health professionals, a psychiatrist and a social worker. So it was very much a talk about our feelings household.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow, though, I grew up without really knowing much about bipolar, and even though it runs in my family. And so when I was at college, I was a junior at Yale, and I basically had this period of depression for a week that flipped into mania. And my parents ended up taking me to the psychiatrist, and he said I should go to the hospital, and I was completely shocked. Like what are you talking about? I'm great. Like, this is the best I've ever felt in my life. And so looking back, I really wish that I had known more about bipolar and more about the family history as well. And I really still think that I could have probably kept things under wraps a little bit better had I known that. So now, but after that episode, I was diagnosed bipolar, and I was afraid of that diagnosis. My parents also were afraid of that diagnosis, and actually convinced the doctors to change it to mood disorder, not otherwise specified. And a brief interlude. I like to avoid the term disorder as well as the term mental illness, because I feel like it implies there's something wrong with me and people like me who have any mental condition. So I call it a condition, and I also just say bipolar on its own. But back then, I was certainly still saying disorder. I was still saying crazy all the time, and I didn't tell anyone except for really close family and friends. And I went 9 years without another episode. Moved back to DC, where I am now, and I'm from. Moved to New York for 10 years, and I was on medication. And then 9 years after that first one, it happened again with a manic episode. And at that point, I decided, this has happened twice. I guess this is just something I should accept about myself. And that definitely opened up some doors, because my ex-wife suggested I write about my own life, and especially this issue. And in 2015, I started writing about bipolars, a show that's gone through a bunch of versions and now is Inside My Head, which I'm very happy to be doing part of this coming Saturday with you guys, NAMI-New York State.
Yeah, I always like to even plug our own event here. So yeah, for those who do want to see more of musical advocacy, mental health advocacy with a musical twist, we are going to have Zach doing a part of his show for us this coming Saturday, May 16th at 7:00. We'll be sending out a registration link with this episode. So I mean, obviously very excited for that. And so I do want to dig in on this. A couple different things I want to ask you about doing the show. But even before we get to the show, something that you did that amazed me more than anything. I got to tell you, and I don't know if we've ever talked about this or not, but not in 2019, but in 2018, when you performed at the education conference, you kind of broke your presentation into two parts. The first part, well, the second part was the music itself, but the first part was you recalling a manic episode. And you went so deep. Like, I almost was like, I was scared. I got to tell you, I'm like, has he crossed over? You know what I mean? Like, so I want to ask you, for someone who's had manic episodes or had those type of episodes, to get into that headspace and get into that place and take people with you there. How are you able to do that and then step back out of it? I mean, that to me is, I mean, I understand acting and everything and method acting, but that was something different. I mean, you really dug deep and recreated for anyone who never seen what a pure manic episode is, it really hit the nail on the head. So how are you able to do that and step back from it?
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question. And I want to convey two examples because they're very different. So the monologue you're talking about was about my first episode, junior year of college, which happened in 2006. And this performance was in 2017. So 11 years had passed. I had a lot of perspective and distance. I didn't start writing at all, as I mentioned, until 2015. So 9 years there. And I think, as I was saying, that the first step was to accept the bipolar part of me. And another step was I had a friend who suggested I personify these parts of my brain. So in the current show, my depression is a guy named Doug, my mania is a guy named Mark, and my paranoia is a girl named Patty. And I actually use that in my real life. I will actually have conversations with Mark when I feel the hypomania coming on. That's the less severe mania that it usually starts with. And in terms of the creative process, I mean, definitely the first step is writing it for me. And I want to relay a quote that I just heard, which is that the obstacle to your ability to write is not your talent, it is getting interrupted. And I just love that. It's
I
so
love
true.
that. I don't even know if I've told you this, but in my past life, I wrote plays, not musicals, but I did write a couple of plays. And so much of writing is just showing up and doing it,
Yes.
Something we definitely have talked about in this episode. I'd love to get your take on this. This is such a great time to tap into your creativity. If you've been waiting to tell your story and just don't know how, or just like you say, life keeps interrupting, that writing of it or getting it out of you. And now, we have all this time and let's use it well and not to minimize everything that's going on right now. But, as you and I know, we've both had mental health challenges. As you get through these challenges, you become stronger. And that's what we're trying to do with this show. And I think tapping into your creativity and telling your story is a big part of that. So can you kind of talk about how that's helped you in your journey?
Yeah, so first to talk about getting interrupted. Sure, it could be that Lena texts me or calls me. It could be that. But I think most of the time it's interrupting myself. And what happens is I find that, I write something and there's a voice in my head that says, that's bad. Like, you should rewrite that. No. And we have to get that critic out of the way for the first draft. We have to, there's a book called The Art of, The Artist's Way. There it is. Mm-hmm. And she talks about writing for 15 minutes by hand in the morning without stopping at all. And it's a great exercise to clear that critic and say, okay, it's not going to be perfect this first time. I'm just going to write something. One of my central quotes right now is, something is better than nothing. And I think that addresses perfectionism, which I've had a lot of. I think that addresses the blocks to getting things started. Like if I wake up and I'm feeling kind of down or depressed, I might not have any motivation to do anything. And I'm a guy who likes to plan ahead, know my whole day. And if I feel like that, there's no way I can do that. So I'll just say, okay, I'm going to get out of bed. That's my plan. Or I'm going to go outside. That's my plan. So just something is better than nothing. And that definitely applies for writing. And then, was there another? I have something to say about staying creative in this time with Corona. Is that where?
Yeah, let's switch. Yeah, we go on to that, and then I think the third part of the question was, how has being creative helped you in your recovery journey?
Oh, great. Okay, so Well, in terms of recovery, helping me with my recovery journey, I think it's writing about the experience is very cathartic, and performing it is very cathartic, and even seeing other people perform it also cathartic. And I think the other thing is like the reaction that people have when they interact with the material. I have, at the end of my presentations, I like to do a talk back where people can ask questions, they can share their own stories. And I often have people standing up in the middle of this crowd they don't know saying, "Oh yeah, I have depression and I've this thing." So these like statements are cool. And my favorite of all was I did the show in Long Island, and this woman came up to me and said, "My daughter was bipolar. She took her own life at 24, and I never really understood what she was going through.
Wow.
And having watched your show, I understand."
Wow. I mean,
like,
that's,
right.
that's something that's so interesting. That just blew me away. I mean, to give that gift you gave that mother, that the pain, obviously, any family that's survived a suicide and have had to move on, people, tend to blame themselves. Is there something I could have done, or something I've missed? But when you were able to see what's actually inside your head, which was similar to what was inside her head, it probably gave that woman so many answers, and taking the blame off of herself. That's amazing. That's really,
Yeah, thank you. And I think we feel alone a lot of the time, and whether or not we have a mental health condition. And I think to be able to share our struggles, our vulnerabilities, that really is a way to come together, and that's what we need. I was listening to the Happiness Lab, which is Laurie Santos, the course at Yale about happiness, and she was talking about basically social isolation and how we think that having our own space is going to make us happy, but actually like interacting with people we don't know yet. I like to call them friends we haven't met. Right. That's strangers. And that actually makes us much happier. And yet there's this fear to do that and to become vulnerable. So yeah, that's why I talk about that question. How are you? Like, how often do we answer it? Just good, fine, but like actually not.
And I think that's so important, being vulnerable, especially right now. And this journey that I've had, like doing this series, has been incredible, because certainly I've gotten all these different perspectives, but certainly people showing their vulnerabilities, and I think that's so needed right now, because we're all feeling vulnerable right now. We're all struggling in some way right now, and to hear, two guys talking about their mental health and being vulnerable and saying there are days we're not doing well, and I've talked about some of the struggles that I've had, and I just think being able to discuss our vulnerabilities now are so much more important than ever before. And something else that you've said a couple of times, I keep needing to dig down on, is acceptance. I think that's so important. I had a guest a couple of weeks ago who was actually one of my former interns, or be our intern again this summer, but she has borderline personality disorder. She talked about cognitive behavioral therapy and radical acceptance, and how that's so important in this situation. I mean, we can't change what's going on around us right now. We have to accept it and move forward. And I think one of the hardest things to accept is for who you are, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, with all our vulnerabilities and all our flaws, and learning from those flaws and those challenges, I think it's so important. So, for someone who's accepted who they are, accepted their limitations, and overcome so many challenges, I mean, are there other lessons you think from overcoming challenges and learning to accept yourself that you can advise to people who are struggling right now?
Yeah, I think self-acceptance is probably a lifelong process, and
totally.
I'm doing well with the bipolar part of it, but for an example of one that I've been working on, struggling with now, is my anger. And so for about 29, 30 years of my life, I basically didn't express anger. I think I grew up in a household where I heard my parents raise their voices one time, and it wasn't even yelling. It was just like a little bit louder and annoyed. And so that's what I grew up with. And I guess I'm certainly grateful that there wasn't a bunch of abuse going on. The other side of that is that I didn't really have any clue about expressing anger. And so my most recent ex-girlfriend, I'm grateful to her because she was the first person to kind of encourage me to express my anger. And unfortunately, some of the time it really got out of control very quickly. And that's been a struggle here with Lena the last few months too. I moved in a month ago, and
oh, great timing.
Oh my God. Well, I moved in actually because of Corona, because I was with my parents and they want to cross-contaminate, of course, because they're high risk. So yeah, and like this, things will come up, and I will just scream in her face. And the last time I even just like physically attacked her, which was the first time I've ever done that, and it was really, really scary for both of us, and also felt really good, which is even scarier. And so it's like I've been working on this with my therapist a lot, and one thing he said that I thought was brilliant is that before anger comes hurt. And the anger was just coming on so quickly that a lot of the time I couldn't even recognize the fact that I was feeling hurt. Or sometimes I would feel like a tiny glimpse of that, and suddenly like there's the anger. And so he's encouraging me, and I'm working on, if I'm feeling angry, be like, wait a second, is there hurt under this? What am I hurt by? What's happening? And, that's been, I don't know, it's been 4 or 5 days since the last, or actually, no, it's been a week now since the last incident, which is great. And I have been really aware of that now, the hurt, because I think, speaking of vulnerability, that hurt feelings are some of the hardest to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, dude, it's so, like, I'm just blown away because there's so many parallels. Like, I'm someone who struggles with anger issues, and I don't have a poker face. Sometimes I'll let my emotions get the better of me, and it's really cost me professionally once, right here at NAMI. I mean, thank God it happened at NAMI, where people understand, where there was someone I had a very tense relationship with, and it was like, that steam valve coming up, and I couldn't control the steam, and I exploded. And it was at a board meeting. It was horrible. It was like the worst incident of my life. But what you said, a lot of that anger, there was a lot there, but a lot of it did come from hurt. This is someone who I felt was insulting me, who, I don't want to get too into it. I probably shouldn't be talking, but again, I think it's so insightful how hurt does lead to anger. And right now, it's so easy to be angry. It's so easy to be hurt. I mean, I was talking to one guest about this, how we're almost going through like the 5 stages of grief, because we're all mourning something right now, whether it's the being able to, walk 20 minutes beside, from where your apartment is, or seeing friends. We're all losing something in this. And anger certainly is a form of grief, one of the stages of grief, but you just hit the nail so well that hurt is the underlying factor of this. And when we're hurt, it's like you say, you can never be more cautious of a wounded animal, because they're the ones that'll strike at you the worst. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
it's so insightful. And I think so many people are struggling with that right now. And it's why you hear, you talk about your situation, why you're seeing more domestic abuse and child abuse during this thing, is because people finding a healthy way to manage anger, I think, is one of the toughest things to master, even more than sometimes accepting who you are, because anger is a part of who I am. And through therapy too, after that incident, I go in and unpacked, why am I so angry, and what was the root of that anger, and what was that person doing? Why was it so triggering to me where it got such a violent response? I mean, not violent like I attacked her as a person or anything, but I threw a soda can across the room in anger, which is, I mean, anyone who knows me, it would be shocked to hear that, because you don't really get to see that side of me that's there. But you're so right. Hurt was such an underlying factor. And like I say, we're all hurt right now. We're all angry. So again, do you just have some tips for healthy ways of dealing with anger? Evidently, I need this as much as you do. So.
Yeah, I think anger is a way of yelling louder, like because I didn't feel heard about something, so I yelled louder. And like today it came up because Len and I had a disagreement about how many eggs had been in the fridge before I went shopping.
Mm-hmm.
And like I'm certain that my answer is right, and she's certain that her answer is right. And really, it didn't matter how many eggs there were. What mattered was that we had two left. Really, that was all that mattered. But I felt myself getting really angry in this conversation because I think when I stopped, and one of the keys is to just slow the process down. So when I feel that, as you said, the steam rising, it's a great metaphor. When I feel the steam rising, to be able to stop and see. We talk about the part of my brain that's the seer, that sees everything. It sees that I'm getting angry, and it sees maybe that I'm hurt, and it sees what my options are. Right? One option could be yelling, or another one could be leaving the room, or another one could be taking a deep breath. There's so many options. And so I think today, well, I did say I'm starting to feel angry, and in the past I've noticed that sometimes she will say, "Well, I'm feeling angry too," and like that has really set me off. And I think it's because I feel like it's hard for me sometimes to express I'm feeling that way, and it feels like she's not hearing what I'm saying. And not only that, but I've made her angry, so now I feel guilty that I made her angry. And for me, guilt is often underlying all of this. So that's been a problem in the past. And today, I'm grateful she didn't say that in response. She didn't say I'm angry. But another thing that happened was that I recognized that I was feeling hurt, that I was being told that I was wrong about the number of eggs, and that I'd gone to the store and done all this shopping by myself, and I felt like, come on, like you're not recognizing the effort I put in, and instead just saying you're surprised about these eggs. And when I was able to get down to the hurt feelings, that helped a lot. So I think slowing down is number one. Even stopping, pausing is my favorite word. Just pausing the action.
I'll give you a great pause before pause, which is one of my favorite. My wife has used that all the time. I use it when I do mental health in the workplace, because so much of our gut is just to react and not pause before we use our pause, if you know what I mean. And it's such a,
it's great.
It's something, I think everyone's struggling with now. And thank you for being so open about it. One thing my wife and I were just talking about this, because we both, we're stressful jobs right now. We're on top of each other. There's no place to really go. But one thing she said, listen, we're both going to designate a chair in the house. If we see the other one in the chair, that's our timeout space. Ooh. Don't talk to the other one. I need to be in that chair and just be alone and just recenter myself for a few minutes. So, I think finding tools that work are so important in this, and understanding, especially in relationships and couples and stuff like that we're both struggling right now. Everyone's struggling, and you gotta be cognizant of that too. And I think the worst thing you can do in an argument, you and I are having an argument, you elevate it and I say calm down, and that elevates the person more, right? So we're trying to figure out how to handle that one too, which is an ongoing challenge. But all the same stuff you're talking about, when we had a same argument about something in the refrigerator, why didn't you tell me there was another bag of spinach in the refrigerator? It's going to go bad, it's so many challenges right now. And thank you for sharing that. And because I think we're all experiencing that, and you articulated it so well. And,
Thank you. Yeah. I want to just add, first of all, I think the pause before pause is great. And the chair is excellent. Maybe I'll propose that here. And but just to emphasize the importance of the pause, because you're talking about reactivity versus thinking something through, and we know that the forebrain, the cortex, cerebral cortex, is the one that thinks it through, and the limbic system, the amygdala, is the reactivity. And anger is pretty much pure reactivity. And so sometimes, in order, like, my feeling, I don't know if this is true, is that the amygdala part works more quickly than the forebrain, just a little bit. So if we just let things run their course, then boom, it just comes out and it gets out of control. But if we pause, that allows the cortex more time to engage and to make a new choice from the choice we usually make. And for anyone out there who's interested in that idea, I'm reading a fantastic book right now called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by
writing that down right now.
Yeah. And it's based in quantum physics and neuroscience, and it's really fascinating. The idea basically being that this whole universe is part of a quantum field of energy. It's all connected, and all possibilities exist at all times until we observe one, and then that one enters this reality. And so the idea is that if we direct our thoughts in terms of what we want instead of what we don't want, and if we get our emotions aligned, it will bring those things that we want to our life. And yeah, it's just a really fascinating book about being able to create the personal reality that we want instead of the one that we've maybe had.
Right. Or create for ourselves, for creating a new reality. And I think that's such a great kind of moment to pause on and transition for the last part of our show today. But it's just it's so important because as we move forward, everyone's focusing on when do we go back, but I'm more worried about more concerned about how do we move forward. And I think reinventing ourselves and reinventing the way that we handle things and learning from this. So when things do move forward and we're back to some sort of normalcy, we've learned from this and we've learned to deal with our anger and learn to deal with our hurt and find new tools to make us better. And I just thank you so much for really leading us down that path. I think it's just fantastic. Like, my mind's a little blown here. So we are running out of time. Would you do a sample of a song? Is she still doing the yoga?
Ooh, I don't know. It's probably fine.
All right. Well, just a little sample so people know what they can experience this coming Saturday night, May 16th, 7 o'clock. The great Zak Sandler, musical mental health advocate with a musical twist. I keep calling you a musical advocate, which I guess you are too. So that's not
sure.
That's legit. Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I can do that. And if I may, I would just love to throw out two ideas for this Corona time.
Sure.
Being creative. So there's two things that I've been playing with. One is to start my day with something fun every day, even if it's only for 15 minutes or maybe it's an hour sometime. So for me, I'm like making a music video right now about Corona, which is super fun. But it might be reading this book that I love. It might be taking a walk, anything. Because I find that if I don't do it first, so often it just gets pushed down the to-do list and it just doesn't happen. And if I do start my day with something fun, the rest of my day just goes so much better. So it's an opportunity, I think, especially now that we don't have to be at the office at a certain time, like, to really try that. And the other one I just started today. It's going great so far.
So far, so good.
And this one has been really, really hard for me to try to implement because, as I mentioned, I'm the kind of guy who has so many things he wants to do. And like, I looked at my old appointment book from a year ago. I had like 9 to 10 things on my to-do list some days. And so the new plan is to only set one goal per day.
Wow.
And the idea behind that, as hard as it is for me to do that, is that if I set, let's say, 5 goals and I accomplish 4 of them, then I'm going to feel disappointed and upset that I didn't accomplish all 5. Whereas if I set 1 goal and achieve 2, I'm going to feel like, oh yeah, this is so great. I did so wonderfully today. And similar concept with time budgeting, which has been very hard for me too. As you know, I was 10 minutes late because I was making brownies. Although I will tell you that my one goal for today was to make brownies. So
I'm glad I was able to help you with your goal. So that's good. Again, assist on that one. I don't even get a brownie, but that's okay.
I'll mail you one. But in terms of time budgeting, it's the same situation. Like, well, first of all, think of the times, like for me, I have a meeting and it gets canceled. And suddenly I have an hour free from my day. It's such a great feeling. As opposed to, I'm like, oh shoot, I'm like running late and I have these 3 things to do, and that's so stressful to me. And, you know, having less stress is I'll be healthier, I'll be happier, and I'll be able to help the world and be my best person as much as possible. So to budget, 30 minutes for something and then it takes 40, it's like, oh my God, I'm late. But if I budget an hour and it takes 30, then it's like that meeting has been canceled. Oh, I have 30 minutes. So that's what I'm trying. One goal per day.
Great advice.
Yeah. Thank you. You can email me and check in with me in a week and see how it's going.
How that's going. We'll see on show night how well that's coming. So we'll check in with you in a week.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so I'm gonna play something if that's
all right. I'm gonna switch the view so people don't have to see me singing along. So the floor is yours.
Okay. All right. So this is I'm trying to think. Yeah, I'll just do this part. So this is the first song in the show inside my head, and no, I don't think you need to know anything because it's the first song. So here we go. I'm gonna turn the volume up. Hold on. How's that?
Good.
Okay, here we go. Started music at the age of 5. When I played piano, my soul came alive. Learned to sight read symphonies of my choice. Sang in operas using my soprano voice. Now I act and sing and play and write shows too. Orchestrate, arrange, transcribe, give you a cue. My 8 different dreams are each so much fun. So I will be following everyone. Now it's me. I know where I'm going. Now it's me. Last evidence is growing, you'll see. So Broadway will be calling on my phone. 'Cause finally it's time. I'm fully grown. But there was 1 week of college where I felt a bit different. So I missed a week of class. I started medication. My mind took on a mind of its own. But all of that has passed. Scary aberration. And I conquered the unknown. Yeah, I conquered the unknown. 'Cause now it's me, it's me, it's me, it's me. I know where I'm going. Now it's me, it's me. At last I am all knowing and I see that who I am is written down in stone. Finally, at last, finally I'm here. Finally, I swear. I'm fully
That was great, and just a very small sample of what you're going to get Saturday night, May 16th, as Zach's going to give us a little more of Inside My Head. So Zach, I can't thank you enough, for you're constantly sharing your talents with us, for really taking such a unique approach to mental health advocacy. I mean, not just the musical twist, but you're just so great in telling your story, both musically and verbally. And you gave us so much food for thought today. And I can't thank you enough. I feel like I could have kept going with this conversation. So excited to have you, have you join us this Saturday night at 7 o'clock, and people will send out the registration link. It should be just a great evening. No better way to spend the Saturday night than with this talented advocate right here. So thank you for all that you do, for being a friend, and just being such a positive voice, and being such a real voice too, because you're not just positive. It's not like you sugarcoat these issues here. You present them in a really real way, which I'm so astonished by what you do. So thank you for sharing it with us. Thank you for being our guest today. I just appreciate everything you do.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you for having me on the show. It's an honor, and I love you guys, and I can't wait to do more with you.
All right. So again, we'll all see you on Saturday night, May 16th, where we get to rock out with Zach and learn a little bit more about what's inside his head, a lot of great songs. And of course, we'll see you next time on the next episode of NAMI-NYS Perspectives. Until then, stay supported, stay connected, stay inspired, and be like Zach and be creative. Thank you.
You can do it too.
That's right.